All right, here I'm back again. Welcome to episode Psycho's Platters 202. Always powered by coffee each and every time. So, we're still in the process of moving, guys. The internet doesn't get switched over for about another week, so I'm gonna try to do these videos at least every other day till we go to the new place and get settled. I already have almost, I'm working on my office, my room. I'm kind of happy. It needs to be a little bit more organized. But until then, I thought I'd give you another episode of Concert Stories. Yes, with a little bit behind the scenes concert stories this time. Act 7. Yes, Act 7. Let's talk about two concerts in general. How about that? So, I had a friend of mine up in Northwest Illinois. I ended up meeting this guy. I'm not going to mention his name. But when I went to the 1997 Carpentersville days and saw Kansas play for the $4 that I spent, I'm telling you, that was one of the best $4 I ever spent. But still, I digress. I struck up kind of a conversation with the guy who was sort of running things. And flash forward a few years later, and I bumped into him again. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. So he remembered me, and he went off, and he's like, hey, you want to help me out? And I'm like, sure, doing what? He's like, well, security, backstage type stuff. And I'm like, all right, awesome. I would love to do that. No problem. Of course, it didn't pay. It didn't, you weren't going to. It was a volunteer thing. But at least, he said, you'd get to meet the bands. And even if it was briefly, you'd still get to meet them and, do a, I don't want to say laid back job. I mean, you did your job and you did it well. And I'm like, awesome. That'd be totally awesome. So originally, I think it was 2000 or 2001, I was supposed to be backstage for Blue Oyster Cult, which would have been real awesome. And I'm not going to lie to you, okay? There's very few times that I've ever really gotten pissed for not being able to go to a gig when I had it all set up. Now, saying that, it was my stepdaughter's wedding rehearsal dinner. Now, I'm sitting here and I'm going, it's a wedding rehearsal. It's not the wedding. It's the wedding rehearsal dinner. Now, am I wrong to be pissed? Because I'm like, it was the dinner. I didn't need to be there. But no, I got major evil looks and shot down. So I didn't get to. I still have yet to see Blue Oyster Cult. I haven't seen Blue Oyster Cult, and at least back, buddy of mine did, and of course they were all laid back. It was the three of them. It was the three of them that were the still original three members, and I can't remember who was also in the band at that time. Like I said, it was 2000, 2001. So I'm like, crap. So I didn't get to do that. But he wasn't mad at me, so he kept me in mind. Flash forward to 2004, and he needed backstage for Eddie Money. And I'm like, I like Eddie Money. Of course I'll do it. By then, I wasn't married anymore and kind of could do things more. So I'm like, perfect. Just come to the thing, X amount of time. This was an outdoor festival, like in a town, small thing. It was for the weekend. And I'm like, no problem. So they gave me the shirt. They're like, hey, this is what this is what you're going to do. Just be reasonable. So I'm like, okay, fine. So I thought that was kind of cool in its own self. And so, the show went really well. I got to meet Eddie briefly before he went, before the show started. And of course I got a handful of albums signed and got to shoot the breeze with him because he was a big golf nut. Well, golf player, and I used to play too. So he played the local club that was there, and I chitty chatted with him about golf and about music. And an added bonus for the day, though, was the drummer for Eddie Money's band at that, brand new. He just showed up that week. Donnie Baldwin. Now, I don't know if that name sounds familiar to you, but Donnie Baldwin drummed at least since the 70s with the Elvin Bishop group and Jefferson Starship, okay, in the 80s. That's the rest of the 80s, that's where he was at. And I'm like, I found that out the day of, so I quickly went back home on my lunch break and grabbed the Jefferson Starship albums I had, which wasn't that many. And so I brought them to the venue too. So Eddie Money goes off and does his thing. And I'm in front of the barricades. So I'm, unfortunately digital cameras were way too expensive at the time. So I'm shooting 35 millimeter. And some of them turned out all right, actually. And he put on a real good show. I don't know. To me, he seemed like he was 3 sheets to the wind. Maybe I'm wrong, but if, he just had that behavior. And like I said, this was 2004, and supposedly he stopped drinking. I don't know. But I remember one time, though, he's like, hey, where's the guitar player? He said this in the mic to the other people. He's like, where's the guitar player? Oh, he had to go to the porta potty real quick. Because we had a couple in the back. And he says over the mic, hey, and I can't remember what his name was, but he's like, hey, just remember, you shake it more than twice, you're playing with yourself. I'm going, oh, God, this is a family concert. I'm just like, really? And other than that, I laughed. I couldn't help it. But, it went real well. He played everything you could expect. And I don't think he had a new album out at the time either, so this was just greatest hits stuff. Maybe I think he had one or two album cuts. And he played the sax, too, as well. And that went really well, out of all honesty. It was a good time. So flash forward to the next year, and my buddy calls me again. Because the festival's always held in July. And I'm like, you need help this year? Yep. Who do we have this year? Night Ranger. Oh, yes, Night Ranger. So I'm like, I'm in. And this time, I brought my buddy Tim Smith in on this. He knows who he is. But he's like one of my bestest friends up there. And I said, hey, he needs help too. So I drummed his name. We both went that night. Got the shirt. We made sure, everything was good. We got there when we were supposed to. The thing is they did a sound check. And the RV that they were staying in for the show, the cooler went on the fritz. We found that out. And so they were like, we need you to transfer the food to this portable freezer unit we had. No problem. So here I am, and maybe I had one other person in on this with me. And they had nice portable sandwich trays. We're not talking like the chintzy stuff. They were decent. But they had portable sandwich trays. They had beer. They had drinks, stuff like that. So we're carrying this stuff. And I heard it was either Jack Blades or Brad Gillis. And I remember this. They were like, hey, where are you going with our food? And I'm like, I jokingly said, at first I go, I'm going to eat it all. And then I went off and I'm like, I'm kidding. Your refrigerator is on the fritz. It's dead. We're going to put it in here. So we did that. They were all very cool. At that time, it was 4/5 of the classic lineup. So you had Brad Gillis, Jack Blades, Jeff Watson, Kelly Keegy, okay, and the only holdout, even though his picture was on the poster, it wasn't really exactly deceptive advertising, because it turned out, I guess, that the picture that they used was from earlier in the year, because all 5 of them were performing early in that year, and then Alan Fitzgerald decided to either retire or just do something else. And so they ended up getting, at the last minute, Michael Lardy from Great White. So I'm like, awesome, you know. So here I am. I didn't have, unfortunately, any Great White vinyl. And I was like, damn it. But I did have some CDs, some CD singles, and K-singles. Do you remember K-singles, guys, in the 90s? Early O's? I managed to find a bunch of different hair metal K-singles that I hung on to back then. And so I brought them all with me. You know, all the Night Ranger and the Great White stuff. So, you know, here we are. We're backstage. Oh, and by the way, before I tell you, I also helped load Eddie Money's truck back in, which was really interesting. And Donnie Baldwin was totally cool, signing the Starship stuff too. Very, very nice guy. So, okay, back to the Night Ranger story. So, with Night Ranger, all of them were so laid back. I'm not kidding you. We had food. We had beers. We did our job. You know, everybody was so cool with everybody. And I, of course, when I thought the time was right, I got them to sign the albums. I ended up, I got 2 of them signed by the band. One of them had a bomber plane. I can't think right now, but also I've got 4/5 of the lineup on those albums. And then with the Great White stuff, Michael Lardy, I got him to sign everything. He was so cool. He gets to the one K-single, and my buddy, the one who was the promoter, happened to be listening to this, and he's like, "Oh man," he goes, "I haven't seen a copy of this," he goes, "in a very long time." And he turns to me and my buddy John, and he's like, "Do you know how rare this thing is? It was the Queen of Sheba K-single." Yeah, I don't know if you remember the song Queen of Sheba, but it was the Queen of Sheba K-single. And he said that roughly they only made about 80,000 copies of that single because something happened at the Capitol pressing plant where the cassette master, I don't know if it was the master or the mold, broke. And because of that, Capitol said, we're not going to remake another mold. So only 80,000 copies of the single made it out. You know, it was pretty hard. So I have one of them. I still have it. I saw it the other day. And so every time, you know, I smile thinking about that. And then there was an album that Great White did. It was, I think, 99 or 2000. And the song Rollin' Stoned was on it. Rollin' Stoned? The cover was like a beach house getting blown away or something, like in a hurricane. And so Michael signs that. Jack Blades comes over to me, and he goes off. He says, "Hey," he goes, "I produced this album." And he starts telling me some stories, you know, and Michael and him are chuckling away. And I turned to Jack, and I said, "Yeah, that's why I want you to sign it too." He's like, "I'm not surprised." So, but they were all real cool. So we get through the show. I'm taking pictures, right? I'm taking lots of cool pictures because I'm in front of the barricade again. So 2 moments happen. This is post show, but number 1 was Brad Gillis was so into it. I have a picture of like his eyes are rolling in the back of his head because he's so intense, and I caught it, and I'm like, wow. Which I went off, and afterwards I talked to him. I said, "Now I know why Ozzy got you in '82." Because you're like a man possessed with that guitar. And he chuckled on that. He did. And I always like Brad's guitar work. I always have. The second story involved Jeff Watson. It turns out that I bump into a friend of mine from high school before the 20th reunion. She, growing up like I did, we grew up watching MTV. She said, "What's the chance that I could get a guitar pick from?" I'm like, "Let me see what I can do. I mean, we're not buddies, but let me see what I can do. Give me a few minutes. Don't go nowhere." So I go to the back. Jeff's, having a beverage. And I said, "Look, you guys have been so kind to me tonight, but I'm going to ask for one last favor if it's all right." He goes, "Shoot, what is it?" And I said, "My high school friend Anita's out here, and she had a crush on you growing up because we saw your MTV videos. It would mean a lot if she could have a guitar pick if you've got a spare one." I ended up with some guitar picks too, but I said, it would mean a lot. So he's like, "Yeah, sure." He goes, let me dig around," and he had it, and he goes, "Let's go take a walk." I guided him right to Anita. Her eyes bugged out. That Jeff walked out and gave her the guitar pick himself. And I think they hugged each other and stuff. But I was like, ha, 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 ha. See, sometimes being a backstage person does help. But that's my stories for the day, and I hope you enjoyed them. Remember, kids, 5th anniversary episode. Put in the comments some questions you'd like to ask Mighty Psycho for my 5th anniversary show. Take care. God bless. Rock on, and see you next time.